and welcome to Energy Top Up. It is your weekly psychology and coaching webinar to build your inner confidence and resilience. And this week we are looking at accountability, because with great responsibility can come great power. And accountability is one way that we can build trust in ourselves, and because we're demonstrating our integrity, and also it means we can focus on our goals for success. In this week, we're going to be giving you a whole host of exercises to think about trust, to think about visuals, to think about ways that you can achieve whatever it is you're looking for. And as always, we are your hosts and trainers. I'm chartered psychologist, Dr. Audrey Tang, and with me is the lovely award-winning parent and family coach, Sharon Lawton.
Hi everybody, and as Audrey said, we've got an amazing show for you again this week. Now, when we think about responsibility, and Audrey mentioned responsibility isn't about blame, but what it is about, for me, for certain, is about finding your power. We've been talking about personal power. This is about finding your power. And if you find your power in a situation where you can take responsibility, then that's how you find and you stand in your power. And that allows you to guide, to change, to lead in whatever situation or whatever circumstances that you're in. So what do you think, Audrey, about all of this?
Well, this is the thing that I've only come to recently as well, because I used to think, oh, responsibility is about blame. And of course, it really isn't. It's about finding those areas where we can say, actually, I had some power over that situation. How can I use it to make it work for me? And that's what we're going to talk to you about. Now, one thing you will have noticed in all of our sessions, you will see that we use flip charts, we use demos, we use props, we use a lot of exercises which ask you to write things down, to make things visual, because visuals are a great way of being accountable. The reason why visuals are so important is because our brains are incredibly clever, but they are also incredibly lazy. We are known as cognitive misers. We don't want to think about too many things all at once. So what we do is we just process things that are going to be relevant to us right now, which means it's very easy to kid ourselves. How many times do we think, well, I've done a little bit of exercise, so I can eat that whole cake? Or you say yes to something, even though you know you're really busy, but you just don't want to upset somebody, or you just don't want to deal with it at that precise moment. Our brains do try to protect us, but visuals help us recognize what's real. Imagine, for example, that we lost power for a second and everything went dark. And I carried on teaching, carried on talking. It'd be very easy for you to think that I'm actually talking in exactly and doing exactly what I was doing last you saw me. That may only be partly true, but of course, sometimes you can't always believe what you see either. So today I want to give you a very quick warm-up, which is all about how you can use visuals to work for you. If you have a calendar that has color coding, this is what we're going to start with. Now, most smartphones do have calendars, and most of them allow you to change the colors for various different events. What I found was I decided to color code my priorities. In other words, I had friends in pink, I had work-related things in blue, I had health-related things in green. And then I also color coded for the things that I did but exhausted me. And by being quite rigid to those color codes for around a month, I could then look at my calendar screen and I suddenly thought, oh my goodness, there is a very clear bias to one color. And this may not be a problem if, for example, you're looking at health, or if you're looking at fitness or career and it's biased towards that color. That's great. But if you are finding that you are color coding and ending up doing more things which exhaust you rather than energize you, rather than work towards your goals, it may be a very good time to redress that balance. So this week, have a look at your calendars. Consider color coding. You don't need to tell people what the colors stand for. And then with that evidence, use it in order to take that power and take that opportunity to shape your life in the way that you want. And on that note, I'm going to pass you back to Sharon for exercise number 1.
Thanks, Audrey. And that fits so nicely into what I wanted to share with you actually in this first exercise. Now, when I'm coaching with people, I often use the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, a book by Stephen Covey. Now, habit number 3 is putting first things first. Now, talking about visuals, have a think about a 13-hour clock. If you had an extra hour in your day, would you still get everything done? Do you use time wisely? So I'm going to share with you a great time management grid. Okay, and you may have come across it before, you may not have, and I'd really love you to give it a try. Now, the first thing I want you to do is a little bit like Audrey was saying, is just to make a list of all the activities, all the projects, all the things that you have to do on a blank sheet of paper. Try to include everything that takes up your time, the small things as well as the bigger things. Even the things that you might feel are unimportant. Once you've got your list, I want you to make a scale on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is very low importance and 10 is very high importance. Okay. Now, when you've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to transfer it onto our grid, our important and urgent grid. So as you can see here, I've got the grid. And we've got 4 quadrants. So we've got important and urgent, important and not urgent, urgent, not important, and not urgent and not important. Now, the idea is that you start to go through your list and transfer them onto your grid so you can see what's taking up your time. So let's have a look at this first one here. So important and urgent. Now, falling into this category are often tasks that, you don't foresee happening, that you've left to the last minute to complete. And you think, oh my goodness, I haven't done such and such. You maybe have identified activities, it's about sort of reflecting on them properly. So it may be things like, I've got a few examples, a project that's due in today. It's obviously really important and urgent because you haven't finished it and you haven't left enough time to finish it. It might be attending a board meeting that you have forgotten to schedule into your calendar. Or maybe you've got an interview. That's urgent and obviously very important. Or maybe your rent is due today and you've again left it to the last minute. They're just a few examples, but what else would you have in that quadrant that would be urgent and important for you? Okay, let's move over to this quadrant here. And this one is all about, it's still important, but this time it's not urgent. So in this category, what I would suggest are the activities that help you achieve your personal goals and complete important work. Just making sure you've got enough time to do things properly so that they don't become urgent. So you've scheduled them well. And for me, I would have exercise and well-being. So for me, they're really important, but it's not, it's not a dire emergency, but it's important for me to schedule exercise and well-being into my daily life. It might be revision if you're going to take a big exam, either, to move you forward in your career or, if you're a young person. Or maybe that preparation for that important interview or that exam. It's really important, but it's not urgent because you've scheduled enough time. Okay, let's continue. This time we're moving down to this quadrant. So this time it's urgent, but not important. But what does that mean? Well, urgent and not important are the activities that prevent you from achieving your goals and stop you from achieving and completing work. Ask yourself, are these tasks things that can be rescheduled or delegated to someone else, for example? So some suggestions that I've put in this quadrant are interruptions, daily interruptions. It might be that somebody else thinks they're urgent for you to attend to, but they're not particularly important at that time. Attending a club or a hobby that evening. Yeah, so it's not important that you do it, but have you scheduled it in? Telephone, email inquiries. What else would you pop into that segment? These are just suggestions for you to have a think about. And then finally, the final grid is not urgent and not important. So what goes into this slot? Well, these are all the activities that are distractions, the time wasters. As you can see here, I've got sort of trivia and things like that. The things that, you wish, that you could do to complete, because maybe you're feeling a little bit bored and you want to be distracted from what it is that you're doing, but they're not going to help and move you towards your goal. So time wasting, scrolling through social media maybe, or excessive time on computer games, sort of flicking through WhatsApp sort of just idly. So what is it that is not urgent and is not important, but is taking up lots of your time? When we start to allocate that things on our list that need to be done, and looking at them using the urgent and important grid, it can really help us to start to focus on moving forward in a helpful way. So put first things first. Think about, even if I had a 13-hour clock, would I be able still to get my things done? Chances are we need to make much more use of time management grids like this. So on that note, I'm going to hand back to Audrey.
Thank you, Sharon. I love that grid. It's so useful. And every time I've done it with my students, they always sit there and go, oh my goodness, I've got so much that I thought was important and urgent. And really, it's just a distraction.
Absolutely.
So useful.
Yeah.
Now, visuals are a great way not only of that accountability to what we're doing right now, but when you have got that sorted out in your head and organized and got that headspace to look forward and to thrive, they can be just as useful when it comes to growing and achieving our goals. So I'm going to talk about the vision board. Now, a vision board is from a piece of writing called the Law of Attraction. Now, you may subscribe to the Law of Attraction, and what that says is that if you put out your goal into the universe, it is something that the universe will just know it's out there and it will be answered at some point. Now, it's a lovely thought, and if you subscribe to that, great. I like to think of it more psychologically. And simply, if we tell ourselves to think about something or even to not think about something, we have primed our mind to recognize it. Therefore, why not prime our minds to recognize opportunities or things that will be helpful for us? And that is what the vision board can help us with. Now, I use an app on my phone, and you can actually create this as a collage, you can create it as a picture, you can actually cut out pieces of paper. It's totally up to you how you want to do this, but I'm going to give you the categories that I like using, and I'll explain why each of those is important to me and why I find it helpful in my vision board. The first is, of course, your material and financial goals. It is what you are aiming to achieve. And it might not be enough just to say, oh, I want to be really rich, but maybe specify. Do you want to be the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company? Whatever it might be specific. And no one needs to see this vision board. So you don't need to worry about anyone making fun of you. Just put that down and you will look for those opportunities. It may not even be conscious when you're looking for them. So material and financial goals. Here, you might also think about the house you'd like to live in, the car you'd like to drive, and so on. The next one down is career goals. Of course, these can be quite widespread. Maybe you want to be a Premier League footballer, or maybe you want to be a celebrity, whatever it might be. But put those career goals down, and they may be quite specific career goals. What this vision board that I use allows me to do is to choose 6 pictures, and that gives you options. You don't have to use all 6, but you can. The next is personal development goals. Now, to me, they differ from career goals because career goals are much more to do with just simply my professional status. When it comes to personal development, I like to focus on things like integrity. I like to focus on things like my physical health. So those are my personal development goals. Now, the next 3 are not career related, not necessarily professionally related, but they are so important when it comes to helping you achieve. Friends and family. Now, one of the affirmations I always like to use is my time and energy are valuable and I spend them wisely. And this little segment of my vision board reminds me on who I like to spend that time and spend that energy, because these are the very people who energize me. And in this particular vision board, I'm able to write statements to remind me of those people and why they're so important in my life. The next one is experiences. Now, this one can be whatever you like. You can get as creative as you like. If you want to visit the Taj Mahal, if you want to float up in the air in a hot air balloon, pop those experiences down there, because they don't have to be, your visions don't have to be purely related into your career. They can be holistic, and that's what makes our life so exciting. And this last one is probably one of my favorite bits. It's where I put my heroes, my mentors, all the quotes that inspire me and keep me going. It's my motivation. So have a think about what you would have under each of those headings. Use a photograph or a picture to depict that. And then you would have primed your mind to look for those particular opportunities, those particular coincidences. And a very simple example was when I was looking for my new house, I thought of exactly what I wanted to have in my open plan kitchen, living, diner. And I took a photograph, and as soon as I saw houses that came up with that particular picture that were in my price range, I was able to make an appointment to go and see them. They focused my thinking. So whether it's the law of attraction or whether it's simply a way of focusing, a vision board is an absolutely wonderful way to help you achieve your goal. And now it's back to Sharon for exercise number 2.
Thanks so much, Audrey. I absolutely love vision boards, and I haven't done one for a while. So listening to you just inspired me to give it another go. But yeah, when I'm talking to young people, I talk to them about all of that, and we talk about their brain genie, which is, it's very similar. It's what we focus on, we notice more of. It brings it to our attention. So thank you for reminding me about that. It's great. So I want to talk to you a little bit about trust. And it fits so well with accountability. So trust is fundamental to any relationship, be it personal, be it professional. But for me, as a family coach, it's really essential to those family team dynamic. But let's face it, it's essential to any team, really. Now, our experience of trust develops from a very, very young age, and the way that our primary carer has responded to us and met our needs. And within the family, well, as we start to grow, our perception of trust will influence how we engage with others and the type of relationships that we have as we start to grow older. And that will certainly impact on our professional relationships too, and how we view other people, whether they're trustworthy or not. Now, as a parent, one of the things that we do without even realizing it, that can actually sometimes be detrimental where trust is concerned, is we might have a child that maybe is a little bit clingy, doesn't like to be left with the childminder or at the nursery or even at grandma's. And so what we do with the best of intention is we take them there and we say, oh, we're going to have such a lovely time, or even you're going to have such a lovely time. And then we get there and, we've settled the child in, and then we distract them. And whilst they're being distracted, we don't say goodbye and we rush out of the door. Now, that's not building trust, is it? Because we do it with the best of intentions because we don't want our child to be upset, but when our child looks around to try and find us, we've disappeared. So it's really important that we're open and honest in any relationship to build trust. And acknowledging feelings is important too. I mean, in that situation, we can acknowledge our child's feelings that they're going to, they miss us and they feel sad. That's okay. But they will soon learn actually that, even though, I'm missing my parent, they are going to come back to pick me up. So, so important. Because it's also about doing what we say, following through, walking our talk. So what else can we do without even realizing it to either build or break trust? Because it's important, certainly for me, integrity is so important, and honesty in my family is our number one value. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions. So does your child or your partner have a diary? Can they trust you that you're not looking through and reading their diary? Can they trust you that you aren't snooping through their texts and their WhatsApps? Are you doing it because you don't trust them? Sounds like there's a conversation that needs to be had there. But we can build trust by doing fun things. Now, for me, you know, having fun is an element of my personality. For me, if I'm going to do something, it needs to have an element of fun in it. So you can actually build trust through having fun and playing games. You know, and I've done trust games when I've been working in corporate situations, and I've also had trust games when I've been working with families and also with my own families. So what are the type of things that we can do to have fun and build trust at the same time? Well, there's one really fun one, and I call it the trust driver activity. You need two people, and the front person has to have their eyes closed, and your partner who's standing behind you has their hands on your shoulders, and they guide you around and squeeze your left arm, your left shoulder, I should say, if you're going to turn left, and your right shoulder if you're going to turn right. And you also have a keyword for, you know, for sort of putting the brake on as well. And you know, then you trust the person to drive you around, you know, an obstacle course or around the house or around the office. Blindfold tasting. So to put a blindfold on and to trust the person to, you know, to feed you, I know, different types of food, to try out new food. This is a great one, actually, if you want to sort of, you know, get children to try different foods and build that element of trust. It's fun. You get those sort of scary feelings, but, you know, it's about building trust that the person who's going to, you know, put that piece of food in your mouth, you know, is not going to do anything horrible to you. Or a blindfold obstacle course. I mean, that's really great fun too, and shouting out instructions. So trust is fundamental to any relationship. We need to feel trust. We need to be trustworthy. And so have a think about that. How will you continue to build trust within yourself and also within the people that you work with and also that you live with? And on that note, I'm going to hand you back to Audrey.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Yes, Sharon's spot on when it comes to trust. It is the fundamental value of all relationships. And if somebody gives you their trust, that's one of the most powerful, valuable gifts of all. So we mustn't abuse it. And in fact, research has come from neurological studies whereby if somebody has been betrayed, you can actually see the trust connections, the pathways disappear. And that's how painful a lack of trust, a breaking of trust can be. So it's so important to build it up. And of course, accountability is part of that, because if our teams, if our families, if our clients, if they know we will take responsibility where we need to, if they know we have integrity, we can be trusted, they are more likely to give us their loyalty as well. And of course, we all need each other for even greater success. So I'm going to take you through a trust audit that you can conduct with your teams. And what I'd like you to think about are the 4 elements that the trust audit can be split into. But then I want to talk you through a way of doing it and why sometimes when we do actually conduct a trust audit, we may not do it as fully as we believe we are doing. First is leadership. Are the leaders in your company visible? Is it clear that they work with integrity, or is it all very cloak and dagger? Do they show innovation, creativity? Do they prove by their actions that they're listening to people when they say we're having a consultation? The people themselves, are they invested in? Do they have training, or is it simply training's only organised when there's a new system or a new technology that needs to be used? Or are you actually interested in developing the skills of your team, not only for use in your own organisation, but if your team wish to blossom and go somewhere else? What you will find is if you do have that level of investment, those people will retain a sense of loyalty to you. Commitment is the other thing. How committed do your employees feel you are to them? How committed are they to you? Procedure is the third thing. Can you trust your procedures? Are you accountable? Do you have satisfactory or better health and safety? What's your governance like? What are your ethics like on a wider scale? And the next thing, the fourth point, customers and clients, loyalty and forgiveness. Now, this is a key part, forgiveness, because loyalty comes in when we talk about our customers and our clients and staying with us. But forgiveness comes in when we make a mistake. And again, research has shown that if you make a mistake, but you take responsibility, you say you are accountable, and you do something in order to fix it and make things better, loyalty is in fact stronger following that. But what's really important is you cannot measure this simply by looking at targets. That would just be short term. Targets and profits may give you a basic idea of what might be going on in your organization. You really have to talk to people, have that conversation, have things like surveys, maybe anonymous suggestions, maybe external events, listening events, anything like that that actually gets people to express themselves honestly. Then you can do something about it. And long term, you can establish how great the trust is in your organization by reflecting on all of those patterns over time. So that's one way of thinking about accountability to other people. And in Kirsty's Homeschool today, now Kirsty, bless her, hasn't been feeling all that well this week, but she's really wanted to record a short piece for us because what she's been focusing on is accountability to herself and her body when she's feeling under the weather. So over to you, Kirsty.
Hello Audrey, it's lovely to see you. Unfortunately, it's going to be a little bit short and sweet from me today. I haven't been well this week. I'm currently suffering with vertigo, but I wanted to use this illness that I've got actually to a benefit. So I'm learning a lot during my time ill. I'm finding it actually, this is like sitting up's a massive win for me at the minute. So I'm finding that I'm having to find new ways within my routine to keep myself well. I've having to set reminders on my phone for when to take my medicine to try and make me feel a bit better. I then have to lay aside a set time, like 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes for that to settle in, where I then have to take myself off, away from everyone and just lay down. So this then gives me time to then recenter myself, regain some energy to try and come back down to the family unit and keep going as a mother and teacher. You know, take time out, look after you. It's so, so important to do those little things, especially when you're not feeling well. Don't feel guilty. There's no need to feel guilty. You know, my work has piled up a little bit. As and when I can actually look at a computer screen, I will log on and just flick through the emails and pick the important things that I need to respond to. But even looking at a screen at the minute is painful. So it's important just to kind of accept, okay, I'm not well at the minute. Let's move forward. Let's do the next little thing that I can do. And it's concentrating on those small little pieces and just moving forward every day.
Thank you so much, Kirsty, and do get well soon. We are coming to the end of the show, so I'm going to pass you straight back on to Sharon for her coaching toolkit.
Thanks, Audrey. So welcome to my coaching toolkit. So what are my tips for this week? Well, we have been talking about trust and accountability, and saying sorry and admitting mistakes also builds trust and accountability for ourselves. Now, let me ask you, do you remember the song When Sorry Seems to Be the Hardest Word? So many of us find sorry a really hard word to say. And I think, you know, we need to be stepping up and stepping into our power and knowing that actually it is really important. Because if we don't, then it damages our relationships. So how do we do it? Tip number 1, butt out. When we offer an apology and then finish it with but, I'm sorry, but, well, then that's not really an apology at all. It just shows that we're too eager to point out what the other person did that we think is wrong. And all that does is it blames and pretty much invalidates any apology at all. Tip number 2, own your mistake. It's important to show the other person that you are taking responsibility for those actions. That's accountability, that builds trust and authenticity. And tip number 3, value your relationship. Saying sorry isn't about scoring points and winning or losing. It's not about letting someone off. Saying sorry says, I value our relationship enough to take responsibility for my part in this disagreement. So I hope you find those tips really helpful. And maybe going forward, sorry won't be the hardest word to say. Back to you, Audrey.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And that leads perfectly onto our thought for the week from Reverend Mandy Marriott of the Dustin Parish. This week, Mandy is going to be talking about how apologising and facing up to something which may have caused a rift is much more important and much more productive than continually spending your life running away. So this week, seek accountability, because that is where you're going to find your personal power. So from Sharon and myself, have a good week. Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Hello. One of the most effective ways that Jesus used to teach people was by using special stories called parables. And I'm going to tell you one of Jesus' parables now. It's over 2,000 years old. But this particular version has been given a modern setting to help us to understand it better. A very rich man had 2 sons, and they lived in a beautiful house in the country. The dad was very kind-hearted and loved his sons very much. The eldest son was very respectable, responsible, and worked hard, helping his dad in the family business. The younger son, on the other hand, was a bit of a rebel. He liked to do things his way and didn't really care much about anyone else. He didn't help out in the business. He didn't help around the house. And in fact, he found it quite difficult to get on with his dad and his brother. And one day, the younger son decided he just couldn't stand it any longer. He wanted to get out. He wanted to go and find a flat in the city. He wanted to live the high life. He felt it was boring living at home with his dad and his brother. He wanted excitement and freedom and independence. And of course, all of that required money, and lots of it. So he went to his dad and demanded that his father give him his inheritance that was due to him. He wasn't going to wait until his dad died. That might take years. He wanted the money, and he wanted it now, because he wanted his freedom. Well, his dad was very sad and reluctantly gave his younger son the share of the inheritance. He knew that his son wouldn't have listened if he tried to talk him out of it. And as his son had packed up and was ready to leave, his dad said to him, "You know, son, I really do love you. Remember, the door is always open, and there'll always be a welcome for you back here." Well, the last thing on the boy's mind was thoughts of returning home. He'd set his sights on the big city, and nothing and no one was going to stop him. Well, he had all that money, and that helped him to buy a very extravagant flat. He suddenly became very popular, especially with the girls. The money paid for gambling, drink, smoking, the high life. Anybody who was anybody wanted to be with him. Well, of course, all this wild living couldn't last forever, and finally the money ran out. He could no longer afford to pay the rent on his flat. He became homeless. He couldn't even afford to eat. He was friendless, jobless, penniless. He roamed the streets looking for food. He slept in shop doorways. His dream faded to a dark reality. And then he began to daydream about what life at home had really been like. He actually began to realize that he missed his dad and his brother. He knew that his dad was amazingly kind and generous. And he suddenly began to realize that he'd been an utter fool. He had been selfish, wanting only to please himself. What a mistake he'd made. And so he came to his senses. It dawned on him that he needed to go home and apologize. He needed to say sorry to his dad, to ask for forgiveness, to say sorry for the way that he'd upped and left, to say sorry for the way that he had hurt his family. How was he going to do it? But he knew he had to. So swallowing his pride, he left the city behind and headed for home. But you know, every day since he left, his dad anxiously looked out, waiting for his younger son's return. He loved him so much. And when he saw his son struggling up the hill, his head downcast, he ran to meet his son and flung his arms around him. As his son tried, stumbling over his words, to say, "I'm sorry, Dad, I've been a fool," his dad hushed him, and they just held each other and sobbed. The boy was overwhelmed by his father's love for him. As he got back home, he appreciated a long hot soak in the bath and a wonderful celebration meal. Sometimes we can all be very thoughtless and say or do something that can really hurt those around us, be it our family, our friends, or our colleagues. And sometimes it's important that we swallow our pride, that we go to the person we've hurt and say, "Look, I'm sorry, I was stupid, I shouldn't have done that or said that. It was silly of me, it was irresponsible." And if we don't apologise, the situation can get worse, and saying sorry can become even more difficult. When Jesus told this parable over 2,000 years ago, his intention was to help people understand how much God loves us and how much God wants to forgive us when we mess up. Today, the parable can show us the importance of forgiving others when they hurt us, and also accepting forgiveness from others too. Bye for now.